Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, a podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys and stories with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce a friend of mine, Laura Hearn, to the conversation. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Matt. Hi.
Hi, lovely to see you. So as always, very brief introduction how we got to this. I'll let you do a bit of an introduction to yourself, let people know who you are and what you do. But Laura and I have known each other for a number of years now, actually, probably dating back to sort of 2017, I guess, or so, when we started to sort of chat through another business I was working with at the time through Happy Full, wonderful friends, Happy Full, go and check out their magazine. And we've sort of continued to remain sort of in touch and connected through sort of social or through messages and so on. So Laura, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining me. Do a little intro to yourself if you can.
Oh, thanks, Matthew. Yeah, I was actually trying to think how we did originally meet. We've known each other for so long, and you prompted me Happy for. But yeah, it's so nice to be here finally. And we're trying to get a date in the diary for a little while. Mainly my fault, but yeah. So a little bit about me. I'm a former BBC journalist and producer. I worked at the BBC for 17 years, my almost entire life, until 18 months, a couple of years ago now. And as many people did, I moved my life out into the countryside, which is my favorite place, during the pandemic. And then and then following on from that, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later on, I was had a number of changes, and one of them was, Laura, you need to come back into the office. And I was like, no, I've moved my life out here and I'm really happy in my wellies. And so yeah, I took the big decision to try and find my own way without the backing of the BBC behind me, which was kind of scary at the time. But anyway, my journey into, I guess, how we met was I've been very open. I've had a long history of an eating disorder. And was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 18, and that's a long time ago now, which I won't reveal my age now. But yeah, and I guess my journey was kind of quite I don't know if it was different or if it was unusual, but I was in and out of treatment in the UK for a long time. Could never really find the help that I needed, both on the NHS. I wasn't thin enough or deemed sick enough to need inpatient care, but then I really couldn't get enough treatment as an outpatient. So I ended up having to sort of privately fund various day centres when I could afford it, but nothing really got to grips with it. And then in 2012, I think, I had a really bad relapse, and I ended up going to the States in America for 8 months as an inpatient to this amazing place. And I was incredibly lucky and fortunate that I was able to go, because it cost a fortune, but it did come at the cost of my mum having to sell her house to pay for me to go there. Yeah. And yeah, it totally saved my life. And there are many reasons as to why it worked when nothing had worked here, which obviously I'm happy to talk about. But I came back, and I was then asked to be part of the BBC's campaign internally called Open Up, which kind of came about during the time that the Heads Together campaign that the Royals had worked on, and we created a strategy and a culture inside the BBC that was much more open around sharing your stories of mental health to help others feel less alone. And I worked with the senior manager there to kind of reprioritize mental health, but also change the narrative and the approach to it. I mean, there were various different things that were available, but when I was there, but it was only really my boss that helped me the most. And that was because he had a mum who had suffered from depression, and really all he did was take me into the car park one day and say, well, what's wrong? Like, what do you need? And he allowed me to go away to treatment for 8 months and keep my job for me. And he was just a human. And we talk about humans. He gave me a hug, because really we had EAP, which is an employee assisted program, but I didn't even know that existed, and I really wouldn't have picked up the phone and spoken to someone at the end of the phone that I had no idea and said, look, I can't eat my food or whatever, but I just needed someone to be a human with me. And that was really what I wanted to implement into the BBC, was that, you know, they have all these kind of programs or tick boxes, or, you know, let's have put yoga on or whatever, but actually so many times people just need you need someone to just be a human with them, and you can't give them a script, and people are afraid to say the wrong thing, but actually I always just say, just put your arm around it, and even if you don't know what to say, just say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. And so so we did that, and it was a really great campaign. It still runs now. And then I went on to go into other corporate companies and help them sort of rechange the culture and the narrative around mental health. And I did create a platform called Jigsy, which most people probably would have known me from, which was like an art-based platform of sharing stories. I have since closed that. And that was mainly because I actually, I just didn't really want to continue being identified with my eating disorder. I think it was a personal decision that for so long it was, a lot of people use their mental health journey to then become their job or their career, and I have no judgment around that, but I think for me it was like people always associated me with an eating disorder, and I felt that was just feeding it more. And I wanted to be more of a journalist, I think, and share other people's stories. So now, since leaving the BBC, I've have my own company called Away with Words, which is a journalist-led approach to storytelling, and I help companies and clients get visibility through storytelling and using a journalistic approach to content and communications, and I love it. I am still very much a mental health advocate, and do a lot of work still with some mutual friends at Mad World, which I love. And yeah, I live in the countryside now, and I've found my feet, and yeah, I'm doing okay. And with regards, I'm an open book with regards to my eating disorder. Would I say I'm 100% cured? I don't know what that means. No, I still have some support, and I have dips and dives, but for the most part, I'm feeling pretty good. As Larry David, anyone in America knows, Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's my favorite. Yeah.
You're feeling pretty good. That's a good.
Pretty good today. I mean, you and I are talking today, tomorrow. I've learned, if anything, I've learned in the last 2 years is like feelings come and go and they don't stay the same, which is a great blessing to learn, because when you're stuck in feeling like, oh, I wish time would hurry up because I can't feel this anymore, I always have learned that it's never going to feel the same tomorrow.
That's so true, isn't it? It's a bit of a common theme that's running through quite a lot of the podcasts that I've been recording over the last, few months, and that it is that point, isn't it? And it's that being in this moment right now, and you can't change necessarily, your feelings by willing them away. You just have to sort of learn to sort of ride through them in many aspects. So, if you're feeling
so much of my journey has been like not being in the present moment, and I really have to try. I've lived a lot in the past and always thinking about the future, and I think we met before we even recorded my little dog here, and she and my horse, and they keep me very much in the present moment, because I look at them and they're just like, they're in that moment. I often take her to my mum's and she loves being there, and then when I pick her up, she's like, oh well, done that now. It's not like I'm mourning, oh, when am I going to see you again, like humans do. She's like, no, I'm off now, that's fine.
It's also they don't know what tomorrow looks like anyway. As much as you've got plans to go here and do this and do that, for them they don't know this, right? So maybe there's a lesson inside there, right? Maybe they're
very grounding animals, very grounding. Yeah.
Hugely. Well, thank you for sharing sort of openly already, in this conversation around sort of your journey, your experiences, and of course the eating piece was a big part of your mental health journey, and it's continues to be. Obviously it's still there, but it's very much, it's that journey, isn't it, that we talk about. And I think that's where with these stories, what I like is sort of how you've changed your world and space, and at what point in there then, I know obviously with the BBC, with the support that you got from the boss at the time, when did you go, what, actually I want to do more with this, I want to create Jigsy and I want to do this stuff? How did that all come about? What was the sort of motivation for you?
I think when I came back from the States, I'd realized the power of being able to express. I'm kind of I hate that word, but creative. Like I'm not very good with numbers, but I'm kind of good with words and expressing and creating. And I think I spent a lot of time there doing kind of a lot of art-based activities and really feeling that. And I'm a massive journalist. Like I love journaling. And I felt that when I came back, I'd almost lost. I felt like I'd lost a lot. I had a community there and people who understood me. And then when I came back here, I felt like, oh my God, like I don't really have anything. And at the time, I suppose social media was a lot less prevalent than it is now. But when I did come back, I was looking on social media, how could I connect to people who understood me? And I found quite a lot of dark, negative places of comparisons around eating disorders, should look like this, even all the skinny stuff. And I thought, why did not I just create a place where people could share I called it, Jigsy, because it was like share your piece of the jigsaw. Everyone has an individual piece, and it was, through an art, express yourself through art or creating a collage or writing some words, and then I'd put them all together on social media and they'd create one big jigsaw of connection. And I still love the premise of it. And so I suppose that was the reason why I was searching for the same kind of connection, wholesome connection that I'd found in the States when I came back. And yeah, it went on to lead me doing some workshops with the Princess Trust and all sorts of things, which I love and I'm very grateful for. But yeah, I think it was kind of a powerful tool, and I still feel that expressing yourself through words, pictures is a really powerful way to get out all the muck that often goes on in your head.
Yeah, all the muck. I like that.
Yeah, all the muck. I was going to say something else, and I thought we already
that's fine.
We had a conversation about me not swearing too much, so
it's all right. You restrained yourself very well. So muck, we'll take muck. But it was, yeah, I find it fascinating, and I have to say, and I've never really spoken about this, and why would I? Because I've never recorded an episode with you. But I've written on Jigsy as well with you, and maybe it was under some sort of pseudonym or something, but it was really, for me, I found it really helpful. I have to be honest with, we spoke about the experiences we were going through as a family, and this isn't about me and my family, but this is about having a voice and people listening to a perspective. And that's what I found really powerful with it. It's that giving people their voice so they can share their perspective of what's going on, because we don't always agree with each other, but we at least have a view of what's happening, or how
and that's, I guess it kind of worked in parallel with you really picked up on something that I did in my career. As a journalist, stories are what make me feel alive. I read them, I listen to them, I watch them, I consume them day in, day out, other people's stories. And as a journalist, I was very fortunate that I got to meet lots of high profile people, actors, celebrities, business people, politicians, and sharing their story was always, great, whatever they had to say or their message. But it was always the stories that, the people who didn't have a voice, that who trusted me to give them that opportunity and for me, and trusted me to share that story authentically and not to try and screw them over or to get an exclusive out of them. But vulnerable people who took a lot of relationship building to trust me before they would go on air. And when I used to come home from work and I put my head on the pillow at night, and I always think, have I done a good day's work? Have I done? And it was always those stories that made me feel like, yeah, my job, I did a good job today. And many of them I still actually keep in touch with. I remember a little, well, he wasn't so little at the time, but a boy, Thomas, who lives in Surrey, and he was really struggling with his mental health. And it took months to build a relationship with him and his mum, for me to go to his house, for him to be able to be filmed for a documentary that I made around him not getting enough access to care once he was 18, it went. And I really, I checked in with his mum not that long ago, because I really thought about him and cared about him. And it, I really took a lot of time, and I still take a lot of time in building relationships with people, because not everyone feels able to share their voice. And I think for so long I didn't. And I come from you might look at me and think, well, white, traditional, middle class. And actually, I realized during the latter years of some of the work at the BBC that I was doing around inclusion and diversity, that it was hard. I felt it was hard enough for me to have my voice heard and shared and to get the right treatment. But for so many people who don't come from, you know, a traditional background or white middle class background, it's even harder to get access to mental health. And so, yeah, I suppose like twofold. One, Jigsy and my work at the BBC was always about giving a voice to those who don't normally have a platform. And I think sharing stories is the most beautiful way of helping people to shift their perspective, to see people through a different lens, see the world through a different lens. And if it helps to, you know, another person to think differently about someone or something or an issue, then I think, yeah, it's one of the most powerful things we have. And we've always done it ever since we were a cave people. We used to sit around and share stories, and nothing's really changed. It's how you connect with people, I think, in the most authentic way.
Totally agree with you. I think it's fascinating, isn't it? I don't read a huge amount. I listen a lot, you know, and I love hearing people's stories. And, you know, I do read, but I just, you know, I prefer to sit with somebody and listen to them tell their story. That's why I love this vehicle, you know, this podcast thing. It's for me the opportunity to sit with somebody and listen to them tell a bit of a journey, you know, and it just helps. I believe it helps to connect. And I think a lot of people just don't put the time or the energy into listening to other people's stories because they're consumed in their own space by the demands of the world. And, you know, we talked a little bit before we went on to this around about things like neurodiversity, and, you know, albeit this is framed around mental health, neurodiversity is obviously growing, and you know, and I don't know, any sort of perspectives around neurodiversity from your side? I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, we do hear a lot more about neurodiversity now, and you know, if lots of people are being diagnosed with ADHD and autism spectrums. And I think we're it's funny because I always think, oh, is it another label? And my nephew actually has been diagnosed severely with ADHD and has been taken to a different school because he just couldn't learn in the environment that he was, which was very academic, and he couldn't focus, and so much of it is a balance between, you know, his behavior was pretty bad, but he wasn't being understood, and so his only way of communicating was to sort of play up, and people would label him naughty, and he's actually really thriving now. But yeah, it is, I think it is a real issue. And we were talking because I was saying how I have never been diagnosed, but I do think I have an issue, a kind of problem with numbers, which is something that I actually want to explore. And talking about different sort of conditions, I was interviewing someone with dyslexia earlier in the month, and we were in the car going to do some filming, and we were talking about it, and I was like asking them to describe what it feels like, and it really made me think about something that I've never ever thought about. I was like, the way she was describing it was exactly how I feel about numbers, and I was like, oh my God, I've often felt very shameful around my lack of numerical accuracy, or and it's almost a bit of a thing in my family. It's like, yeah, Laura, she's not very good with her numbers. Like, is she okay with her finances? My mum's like, you got your finances, have you done this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And I actually, like, it's kind of that weird thing when words, they just seem to seamlessly happen for me. It's like I can create them, I can think about them, organize them in my brain. But numbers are just, I have this block, and it's almost a fear, and I do feel quite shameful, which is why I always say, yeah, I'm no good with numbers, but I'm good with words. And the way this person was describing dyslexia, I was like, God, I wonder if there's something around there called around maths or numbers. Then I went home and Googled, and there is a whole thing called dyscalculia. Never ever heard of it. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, good. I don't know why I hadn't. And then I was like, there's a whole thing on the NHS about it. It's actually something that exists. And so and just actually knowing that I wasn't completely stupid, and that it might be something, it actually did make me feel slightly less ashamed. And I probably wouldn't have brought it to this conversation if I didn't know that existed. And I'm not saying, I don't want it to be an excuse, because there is, you know, I could very well learn numbers better, or teach myself things, or that's why I pay probably more money than most people to have an accountant, because I'm worried that I'm absolutely I can't look at a spreadsheet. I don't know how it's, but and I suppose I could teach myself, but and I have tried, and people have, even small diagrams. I've had, like, my dad even sit me down with a really basic diagram, and I still don't get it. I just don't understand how that works with that. And so there are a lot of conditions, I think, that go undiagnosed, and it really causes a lot of stress and shame amongst people. And it's almost, just having that diagnosis. I haven't been diagnosed, but at least I know that there's something, that it is something that exists, and I might not be completely thick around numbers. It does kind of help in a way.
Well, definitely. It's fascinating, but you look at where that came from. It came from you listening to somebody talking about experience. And I think that's where the power of connecting through stories becomes really useful. It's, when you're talking about your own perspective and experience, other people connect. I get that a lot with people, when I'm talking about content or things that we're doing, and people are going, oh my God, if you show people the 12 signs of burnout, guess what? Most people will go, oh my God, I think I might be near burnout, but they've never seen it before, so they just sort of get on with life, and it's those sort of things I think are really helpful when there's sort of put out there publicly, so people are aware. Of course, we need to be careful not to self-diagnose, and I think that is a risk right now. There's a lot of this sort of self-proclaimed, I'm this, I'm that, I've got this, I've got that. So it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, having something that I never liked labels, which is why we talked earlier about, I didn't want to be put into a box. But I think that we're all so different, and we're all on different spectrums. And when I talk about things, I used to really be quite critical, and I am still quite critical. My therapist would say I'm still quite critical of myself, but I think the things that I see in other people that make me warm to them are their vulnerabilities and the things that make them different. That's why I love them even more. The people who are willing to say and talk about their vulnerabilities, I think really is endearing to me. And I think one of the things that I used to struggle with is I'm quite sensitive. Well, I've had several members of my family say, oh gosh, you're so sensitive, Laura. And I used to find that quite difficult. Like, I feel quite a lot. I love very deeply. I get attached quite quickly, not to people, but to things. Like I find change or saying goodbye quite difficult, which is why a breakup that I had, at the same time I left the BBC, was really difficult for me. And I suppose now I used to wish I wasn't that way. Yeah. And now I think, God, Laura, maybe like your sensitivity and your ability to love and to care deeply is actually something that's quite lovely. And I try now not hate on it, but think all the things that, all my vulnerabilities, all the things that I used to think, oh, you're not quite like everybody else. Like, I'm my age, I'm now like not married, I've got a dog and a horse, I haven't got children, and lots of people my age probably would be. And I think, oh, what's wrong with me? But I don't know, there isn't a right or wrong. And every, I had a story that I thought was going one way for 6 years, and then suddenly that chapter ended. And I think we always talk about what's your story, but I think there's so many different stories in anybody at any one time. It's just another chapter, another page. And so my story is very different 2 years later than it was, and actually it's full. What you lose, you gain. And sometimes you need things to force you to change. And sitting here now, I'm so grateful that those things happened, because I feel like I'm a much more rounded person. I have stronger boundaries. I know what I want, what I don't want. And I think I don't have so much judgment on myself around the things that I wished were different. And I think before we talked, you said you look at them, they're your superpowers. And I think, my sensitivity and my empath, sometimes they can be problematic for me because I may get hurt, but I also think they're the things I look to others and think that's so beautiful about you. And so we're all full of different makeups of different little bits of this, and it would be really boring and dull if we all were the same.
Yeah, it would, and I think there's that I think everybody at some point challenges themselves to think, am I normal? Am I, conforming? Am I don't know. And I think I've been through that journey many times myself. And I think everybody that I've spoken to on these episodes has been through the same sort of transformation in their own lives, and I think we're craving something we don't understand. And often that's the half the challenge, isn't it? But sometimes those superpowers, I think, is so useful to hone to, and, never change them. We can't really, can we? So we hide them, and that's half the battle. And that's where we're suppressing our feelings and our emotions, and we're not being honest about who we really are. And I struggle with that sort of concept, the imposter piece of, well, people are going to find me out in a minute that I'm not really very clever, or I don't really understand, or I'm not really a mental health expert, or I'm not really I don't proclaim to be an expert. But you know what I mean? I'm always fearful of those things. And I think that's just baggage we carry with us through our lives.
What makes someone an expert? Like,
Oh,
you have
exactly.
a huge amount of experience. What is an expert? Like, experience is so key. And I think, in fact, I was doing a piece for a leadership piece yesterday, a piece of writing, and the piece was around, experience or age when it comes to hiring people in the C-suite. And it was really interesting because, traditionally you might think you should, a Gen Z or a graduate doesn't have the experience and the knowledge to, be a leader, but actually what they bring is a whole different approach, fresh approach. And it was around, then when you get to a certain age, you're too old, you have too much experience. And so it's just like, there's never a right thing for anybody. It's like, experience or age, they say go and get experience, but you can't get experience, and then you're too old. And it's like everyone is just trying to fit. We're all trying to fit into something, but no one really knows what that is.
But you got to make your own thing then. That's where you have to do your own thing. You create your own lane then, don't you? And you roll that. I'm conscious of time in this as well, and I just wanted to sort of ask you just final sort of questions, if that's okay, Laura. The future for you, where's it going? What are you looking for? What do you want to do?
I think I still have a lot of work to do on myself.
Okay.
And I suppose some people would have answered that question around what you're going to do with your career or job. And I think actually a lot of my work is to do with me. I think, the breakup was really difficult for me. And it happened at a time when in 3 weeks I left the BBC, didn't have a house, I was living out of a bag, and then the love of my life, which I thought wasn't anymore. And it's taken me, I suppose, today to sit here today, well, in the last few months, to really feel that I'm letting go properly and allowing. And I think a lot of my work is around letting go, setting boundaries, finding out, and doing a bit more deeper work around myself. I think I'd neglected myself for quite a while. So I have put myself back into some therapy, which I think I love having therapy now. I think you can't actually undervalue having an impartial person that's not your friend or family to talk to, and also he challenges you and calls you out. So I'm doing a lot of more personal work, and I think that is really important for me. And future-wise, I'm developing my own podcast, which I'm really excited about. I'll be launching soon, where I'll be sharing more stories and people's
competition. Are you going to be competition?
No, it's not in the mental health space as such, so don't worry. And I have some exciting things coming up. I'm going to be traveling, hopefully a bit more this year. I love traveling, and I will be riding my horse and looking after my dog and being in the wellies and trying to stay present. I think mostly is my challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, it sounds amazing. Well, look, all the best with that continuation of the journey and staying in the moment and all those things. I think it's so important. And it's great, and I'll put links into your work so people know where to find you. But as I always do, just final thoughts. So anything that you live your life by, motto, quote, thought, comment, anything like that stands out for you, or any final words?
I mean, it just came to me. I don't really have anything, I suppose, but I that I live by daily. But I don't know why, but most people, well, not most people, but some people know through my story that my stepfather was killed when I was 18 in a car crash, and he was probably one of the most influential people in my life. And it was 25 years ago actually that happened this month. And as a family, I always think, my gosh, how can one person, Michael's like a legacy or what he left behind, still have such a massive imprint on me every day? But he does. And his favorite song, which I used to hate at the time, I used to really moan, which I never would now if I had my time again with him, was Frank Sinatra, My Way. God, it gets me a bit emotional to talk about it. But I would say to anybody listening to this, like, do things your way. Like, just when I think about a song and do it my way, like, I just think, people always try and tell you to do something or try and get you to fit in some box, or to just really be okay with being you and being different in whatever capacity that is, because we're all different. There is no normal. And to just really try and tune into yourself and follow your own path and to do it your way. Because I think one of the things, the biggest learnings that I'm having to do is not people please, and it's not selfish to actually put yourself first. It's that someone reminded me last weekend about the cliche of the oxygen mask first. If you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you can't be there to help other people. And I think when you refer to burnout, I think that is so much of the issue when people burn out, is because they forget to prioritize themselves above everybody else. And it's not a selfish act, it's actually a really compassionate act to yourself and to others to prioritize yourself so that you can be in service of others. And so I would say, do things your way, and don't feel bad for prioritizing yourself so that you can show up for other people.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura.
So thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Your company is called Away with Words, so that obviously falls in with My Way, right?
Yeah, I love words.
I've heard this. Yeah, it's amazing. Listen, huge thanks to you. It's been a pleasure, because I knew it would be anyway, but it's been a long time for us to get to this, but I'm so grateful we are. So thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Bear, for not barking too much. So I thought she was good.
She's been a good girl. Well done. Well done, Bear. Amazing stuff. Look after yourself, and I hope everybody listening enjoys this episode as well. So take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Matthew.